Is there a popular headcanon in your fandom that you don't like to use? There are some headcanons in my fandom that are apparently heavily used, and I've seen some fans making a scene over people who don't choose to use that headcanon. It just annoyed me, because why does everyone have to have the same headcanons? A lot of the headcanons I saw people harassing others for not using also just don't make sense in the canon source material. Like, they're getting mad because someone wanted to have the character in a more canon version. I think it's fine to have headcanons about anything, but why get mad when someone else doesn't have your same headcanons? I guess I wonder how other people react in situations involving this in fandom spaces, because sometimes it really annoys me, but getting into arguments over fandom just gets exhausting. Credit to Reddit user ShootMeAesthetic for starting this thread on the fanfiction subreddit. And let's go read some answers. Remember, it's okay to disagree with people's opinions, just be kind about it. And I apologize if I mispronounce any character names in this video. At this point, making every mentor or teacher a parent figure is super tiring. The fact that I can name so many is exhausting. Aizawa from My Hero Academia, Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen, freaking Captain Price from Call of Duty. Sometimes teachers are just teachers. I guess people misunderstand or combine parental affection to a mentor or teacher being proud of their student. I guess? In the Stranger Things fandom, Steve Harrington as a mom has been taken to the extreme, referring to the youngsters as his kids, or adopting Max. For anyone outside the fandom, he's 19, she's 15. I'm not a fan of it, let's put it that way. Luigi from Super Mario wore a dress one time to disguise himself as Peach in order to trick Bowser, all for a mission. And now everyone thinks he's super feminine and really into cross-dressing. It pops up in almost every Waluigi fic I've read. And honestly, I'm not here for it. The version of Luigi in my head feels perfectly at home in his plumber outfit or a suit or tux if he's gonna dress up. The Amazing Digital Circus fandom just made up a new character named Jax in their head, and then got mad when Jax from the show wasn't like they were expecting. The Ruby fandom likes to attribute all manner of cat-like quirks to Blake, but one I've never liked is giving her a particular dislike for water and rain. The comics are of questionable canonicity, but I consider their choice to show Blake as a strong swimmer on more than one occasion a small win. Link is mute. Link from The Legend of Zelda is not mute. He has spoken in games and comics before, and he has lines that you can choose to say in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It's just that we can't hear him talk because Nintendo has stated that it would break the immersion for players. Also, in one of Zelda's diary entries in Breath of the Wild, she spoke of him talking to her. It's the same for the protagonist of Undertale. We know they can talk because there's some action lines about them singing and telling jokes. I loathe the fandom's view of Percy Jackson as just a dumb himbo who needs Annabeth to help him do anything smart. Like, no! Percy is smart as hell. He just thinks he's dumb because he has severe low self-esteem, so he thinks badly of himself in the narrative. That, or some people point to his obvious traits caused by ADHD as proof of him being dumb. In the My Hero Academia fandom, lots of people make Deku out to be some sort of virtuous, naive baby who hasn't ever uttered a curse word, ever, not once. When in the literal manga, he has said damn/damn it, shit, and I believe hell several times. He doesn't curse often because he's polite, not because he's innocent. Yeah, Deku is a precious and sweetheart baby, but naive? He grew up bullied by his only friend, who uses murder threats and curse words to order coffee. If anybody thinks Deku is so innocent like most of fanon likes to depict him, they missed a lot of canon. Sometimes people forget that Peter Parker from Spider-Man is literally a genius. If you want to make him a teenager, that doesn't mean that you make him naive and dumb. So basically, the teenage headcanon is Pete can't understand what a scientist is saying or something. Jason Todd from Batman constantly being depicted as either a violent maniac with no rhyme or reason, or someone who's completely docile and just sits around reading and baking. Seriously, the trad-wifification of Jason Todd needs to be studied. There's no middle ground and practically no consideration of canon whatsoever. In One Piece, Crocodile being Luffy's biological father, it's often conflated with the theory that he's transgender, which is much more plausible. I don't mind it at the end of the day, but I wish it was easier to find fics where he's trans, but not a parent. The usual, making the bitch a sad, traumatized little baby who's so sad and abused, and that's why she's mean. She's secretly a sweetie deep down, I promise. Woobification BS. Weakens the character AF. Just let the bitch be a bitch. Some people don't have the excuse of tragic backstories. Some people are just like that. If you, the generic you, have to change her so drastically to justify liking her because you want internet brownie points for liking unproblematic characters because that's clearly what makes you an unproblematic person, do you really even like her? Oh my gods, this. I see this a lot with Regina George from Mean Girls and Heather Chandler from Heathers, but add on they're lesbians and their parents are homophobic so they can't come out, and that's just so hard for them. Which I understand, being closeted is hard. I was for a long time, but I didn't act like that. It's just like, let them be mean. They're rich white girls. They were probably just spoiled and never corrected on their behavior as kids. My fem/fandom likes to make the more traditionally feminine one bisexual, and the less femme one a lesbian, but it's the less femme one in canon who has been in a relationship with a guy. Granted, I know comphet is a thing, but I still feel like the gender dynamics are what make people go, femme queer person is bisexual, the one who looks like a lesbian is a lesbian. And as a very femme person who is very much a lesbian, I like to subvert that at every chance. So I usually reference the femme one being a lesbian, and the less femme one being bisexual. For the Dragon Age fandom, it's not a huge portion of the fanbase, but I see it often enough, and that's Alistair having pointy Dungeons & Dragons half-elf ears. That would actually go very much against canon and cause political issues, and honestly, I roll my eyes whenever I see it come up. Especially if it's defended with the excuse of, but Dungeons & Dragons does half-elves this way, or biology doesn't work like that. Because all I can think is, this isn't Dungeons & Dragons' friend, and he's not a half-elf, and there's likely magic involved. Biology doesn't apply here. I'm so tired of people trying to apply Dungeons & Dragons or Tolkien rules to other fantasy works. Orcs can't do magic, they're supposed to be too dumb. Fuck off, I'll have my intelligent orc sorcerer, thank you very much. I dislike how a lot of people have decided Alistair from Hazbin Hotel must speak random French words. He has never dropped any line of French in all the episodes of the show, and he's spoken quite a bit, but people think since he's from Louisiana, early 20th century, then he must say them. It makes no sense for him to specifically turn to French for endearing names or confessions, etc. I hate reading it. It feels out of character since we know that's not how he speaks at all. I noticed that a lot of Stranger Things fics tend to incorporate abuse into the Wheeler family dynamic in a way that really felt kind of off to me. Usually Ted is presented as the abuser, though Karen gets it every now and then. I do think that Mike and Nancy's parents have a largely loveless marriage, and there's some Stepford vibes going on, but I never got the vibe that Ted was beating his wife or that they were these religious nuts that thought Dungeons & Dragons was evil, to be honest. It just felt very reminiscent of the Dursleys' treatment in Harry Potter fics. Out here in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, I disregard the majority of fanon, but one that is an immediate click away to me is Commander Cody's name coming from the word Kote, or Slut Obi-Wan. I'm sorry, but Slut Obi-Wan has to be the funniest thing I've ever read. Ships. So many ships I see that are really popular. People headcanon to the point that some actually believe it's canon. Not new people, ones who have been in the fandom for a long time. And that's fine if you think that they'll get together, but I've seen some people literally, physically harm others because of it. Looking at the Bungo Stray Dogs fandom, Sukoku. I never understood ship headcanons or wanting a ship to be canon. 99% of my ships I do not want to be canon. Though, I ship weird stuff, and if they were canon, it would ruin the source material. I notice you have a South Park profile picture, so I'll talk about the South Park headcanons I don't use, which is basically all of them. I don't write Cartman having heterochromia, Butters having a scar or being trans, etc. I feel like I'm a sucker for some older headcanons though, as my favorite content for South Park is from early 2000s/2010s. When I was in the South Park fandom, besides from the things you already mentioned, I also never wrote Kyle with green eyes because it felt too predictable, and I didn't like that people always make redheads green-eyed. So his eyes were brown or hazel in my fics, and I still stand by that headcanon of mine. When people start with the whole X is coded as Y shit, my eye genuinely starts twitching. This often goes hand in hand with people attacking you for not sharing the same headcanon, which makes me disregard it even more, petty as it may be. People can headcanon whatever they want, but as soon as they start crowing about how it's practically canon, it becomes endlessly annoying. This happens a lot with people headcanoning characters as autistic, like Leos from Dungeon Meshi or Ghost from Call of Duty, or as certain sexualities. No, A from Genshin Impact is not a canon lesbian, and even if she were, I would not have to write her as one. Coding, most of the time, means stereotyping. Reminds me of some minor drama in the Sonic fandom, when one person who was too deep into headcanons edited another person's art of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles in human form by changing Knuckles' skin from light to dark and adding the caption, "Fixed your crap for you." This person truly believed that Knuckles was supposed to be black, and thought they were doing a service but also being a jerk about it, and then was absolutely shocked at all of the backlash. The headcanon that Dean Winchester from Supernatural is submissive under his hard outer shell. He's many things. Kind, considerate, paternal, but not submissive. When the going gets tough, Dean instantly takes charge. A real and true leader. It's one I accidentally do sometimes because I love Hurt Comfort, but the character is not just some useless depressed twink who needs his beautiful hunk of a man to come save him. He can take care of himself. I have been guilty of doing the twinkification of characters, to be honest, but I don't like when people go overboard and make them completely helpless either, especially if it's not in character for the character they're applying this to. People really make Arthur from Inception out to be extremely cold in fanon, grumpy, sarcastic, and mean, and it's just not what he's like in the movie. He's loyal and fearless and good at his job and dresses professionally. That doesn't mean he has to be this catty, pointy, infallibly brilliant asshole all the time. He's actually fairly subordinate. Professionally, he is a right-hand man. He's not in charge and doesn't ever pretend to be. He also suffers from twinkification disease, wherein people see a 5'9" muscular man, the exact same height and nearly the same size as Eames, the other half of the ship, and keep referring to him as a twink. Then they'll refer to Eames as being like muscle-bound and enormous when he's just a bit stockier and wider in build and the same height. I just don't think they know what a twink is, actually. Or that it's okay if there's not a size difference. It's not really as major as the other stuff in this thread, but I don't like using the Suzuki surname for Sunny and Mari from Omori. I make my own surnames for them. Though individual fics/AUs having their own surnames for the characters is also pretty common, but Suzuki is the fanon surname for them otherwise. Nicknames that aren't used in canon. Seeing them being used out of nowhere gives me a jump scare. Every single time. Anytime the nickname comes up, I make the conscious decision to replace it in my head. Unless it's an original character saying it, it just seems out of character. I mostly disregard fanons, even really popular ones, and I would ignore someone who thought I should be using them. In fact, I'll go out of my way to do something that is contrary to fanon because I don't like fanon. Sometimes you'll bump into people who don't realize that these popular headcanons that everyone seems to have latched onto aren't actually canon. I had that happen once, when someone asked me why I ignored a specific event, and I informed them that that never actually happened in canon. This is basically how I take things. I find fanon to be creatively stifling. Sometimes my headcanons line up with fanon, or I see fanon I can agree with or like, but I'll never use fanon just because it's fanon. I never use popular headcanons at all. Fanon tends to reduce characters to very basic traits to fit them into popular tropes and templates with little regard to what makes them interesting, and it railroads people who may come up with good ideas of their own into the same narrow range of pre-made headcanons that everyone uses, and that just makes fanworks more boring overall. People who complain about not everyone using the same headcanons already have 70% of the fandom catering to them. They need to shut up and let the rest of us exist. Big thank you to my Patreon members, my little Grues, Kuski55, Fallen Vexen, Sam, Donka42, I Am a Noodle, John Huang, Fantastic Wreck, Laser Scorpio, Night Avenger, and Mintara. Thank you so much for extra support on Patreon, it means the world to me. I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you for sticking around as long as you have, and hope you guys are doing well. And the same goes to my YouTube channel members, my mini-roos, AD, Taylor Thompson, Foxstar Killer, Logan, and This Person 10. Thank you so much for your extra support. I'm so glad to have you be a part of my channel. Thanks for being here. I hope you're doing well, and I wish all of my supporters the very best. And that includes everyone who I didn't mention by name. Thank you for watching. Even if you're not a subscriber, thank you for being here. I hope I could entertain you or stimulate some interesting discussion. I've definitely seen popularly accepted headcanons in different fandoms of mine that I personally don't understand where they came from. I don't get that vibe for these characters, but luckily I don't think I've seen anyone try to force these views upon any other fans, which is nice. But if you've had a worse experience, please feel free to let it all out in the comments or just talk about anything related to fandom and headcanons that you want to say. I really appreciate you watching and leaving comments, and if you give the video a like, that's cool too. And I will see you in the next video. Have a great day, everyone.